Welcome to a cloudy Aberdeen, where today I'm flying Loganair down to Manchester on a rare Embraer ERJ 145 aircraft. Loganair are Scotland's national airline and pretty much the last true regional airline operating in the UK. So in this video I'll show you just why I think they're so good, and how after decades of Britain's regional airlines like Flybe, BMI, Eastern Airways and more all going bankrupt, Loganair are still going strong, at least for now. And if you're wondering who I am, my name is Freddie and I make videos reviewing airlines and hotels as a hobby. So far I've been to over 50 countries and flown over 70 airlines on my travels, and all my trips are completely self-funded, unbiased and professional, or at least I like to think so. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, then subscribe and stick around. We start off at Aberdeen International Airport, where I just landed on a flight with British Airways from London, and, being careful not to walk in front of this car, I head inside. The Loganair check-in area is helpfully located right next to the entrance and was pretty quiet, so I was able to get my boarding pass quickly. Aberdeen is one of Loganair's main hubs, so they have quite a large presence here. As you can see on the departure board, about half of the flights today are Loganair. Security was empty and I basically walked straight through. And they have the new machines too, so you don't need to remove laptops and liquids from your bag. And inspired by Andy Murray on the wall, I decided to buy a Scottish souvenir and got some Walker's Sticky Toffee shortbread in the duty-free shop. Now Aberdeen is a pretty small airport, with about 2.3 million passengers a year passing through, making it the 17th busiest in the UK as of 2025. But when you include total aircraft movements, it actually jumps up to the top 10 because, unbeknownst to many, Aberdeen is actually the world's busiest heliport, with over 100 daily helicopter flights operating from here to the many oil and gas rigs out in the North Sea, as this cool visualisation from NATS, the UK's air traffic control organisation, shows. I was here on a Sunday though, so there wasn't much happening today, so without much else to do, I headed to the gate. I saw one of Loganair's ATR 72s on the way to the gate, and if you want to see what that's like, you can check out my review in the description below, where I also explain more about the history, fleet and route network of Loganair, whilst flying from the Isle of Man to London. Back to the plane we're flying on today though. The Embraer ERJ family of aircraft is a relatively modern one, being introduced into service in 1997. And, kind of shockingly to a self-proclaimed aviation buff like me, over 1,200 have been made, with the last ever being produced in 2020. I say that's surprising because earlier in the video I said the ERJ 145 is a rare aircraft, which might seem like an odd statement to the 12% of my viewers from the US, as there are literally hundreds of these planes at every American airport flying with United, American and others. But in the rest of the world, they're almost unheard of. In fact, as far as I can tell, Loganair are actually the only airline in the whole of Europe that fly regular scheduled service on these. And the only other place you'll find a lot of them is in South Africa, where Airline operate 30. So to me, this is a rare and exciting opportunity, but to people in the US, it probably just seems like the most mundane thing in the world. The ERJ is also one of the safest aircraft ever made, with no recorded fatalities from crashes, so that's reassuring. Anywho, time to board, but just before that, here are the stats and route for today's flight, where we reached a cruising altitude of 35,000 feet and stayed there for about 7 minutes according to Flight Radar, before descending into Manchester to arrive a pleasant 22 minutes early. Stepping on board, we see the ERJ's 1-2 layout, which was perfect for me as I was travelling solo today, and the flight wasn't full, so I would say no need to pay for seat selection, but I knew I wanted to sit right at the back by the engine for this video, so I paid a reasonable £7 to select it. Now here's my seat, 18A, and the thing I like about Loganair's cabins is all the seats have a custom tartan head cover on. Legroom is fine with 31 inches of seat pitch, but it is pretty narrow. Whoops, that wasn't supposed to come off. The seat is comfy and well cushioned though, so perfectly fine for a short flight. And this specific aircraft was approaching 27 years old, and I was about to say the seats felt super dated, but reading online, Loganair actually refurbished all of their ERJ 145s in 2023, making these seats just 3 years old. So that shows how much I know. And here's the main reason I booked this seat, the great engine view.
For Manchester, for some guests on board, we carry on to Newquay. Cruising in, my name is Mark Shilton, your captain on board, and Vic on the flight deck is my colleague Nicola Despo. He's flying you down to Manchester. In the cabin you have already met his Amelia. But ready to go. Should be on-time departure, flight time to Manchester around 15 minutes.
Other aircraft types you may have flown. Please pay attention to illuminated signs and crew instructions. Your safety card is in your seat pocket and shows you the brake position that you must adopt. A light and whistle are also attached to attracting attention. Festive flotation aids are available for...
So without further ado, here's the short taxi and takeoff coming up next. And fair warning, if you choose to sit in this seat, it does get a bit loud from being right next to the engine. In-flight service on Loganair is definitely above average for a European airline. Despite this flight being less than an hour, we got a tea or coffee service with some classic Scottish snacks. The Tunnock's caramel wafer is especially good if you've never had one before, and is best enjoyed by dunking it in some hot tea. And here's the 50-seat cabin of this aircraft. I reckon it's about half full today. The last part of the in-flight experience is of course the loo review, and it was actually surprisingly big for an airplane of this size. The sink didn't work though, which I wish I'd known before squirting a dollop of soap on my hands. Now as we begin our descent into Manchester, I'll briefly cover how I think Loganair have managed to survive where other small British airlines have failed. Flybe, BMI Regional, and most recently Eastern Airways and Blue Islands in 2025 have all ceased operations, with many of their old routes being absorbed by Loganair, meaning they now truly operate all over the UK rather than just in Scotland. But what's actually allowed Loganair to survive where all others have failed? I think a big part of it is that they act as an essential air service to many areas in Scotland, and the Scottish Government give them good subsidies to operate these routes, which acts as a good backstop. But they also focus on really niche routes that no budget airline would ever touch. This is Flybe's old route map from back in the day, for example, and looking at it, almost all of these routes would have been served by British Airways and, most dangerously, budget airlines like Ryanair and EasyJet, so Flybe just couldn't compete. Going back to Loganair's routes though, they have almost zero competition except on a few from London and Edinburgh maybe, and that gives them the ability to price tickets how they like, which means expensive tickets, but at least Loganair is still in business. And they've also announced partnerships with Heart Aerospace and Beta Technologies for new electric aircraft, so I'm definitely looking forward to flying on those one day.
Travelling onwards to UK are requested to remain on board in their allocated seats for the short duration of our turnaround. Take care, thank you.
So here we are in Manchester, and that means it's time for my final thoughts. I really like Loganair, and I feel they do a really good job of giving the whole airline that Scottish spirit. The planes are all interesting experiences to fly on, the crew are always super friendly, and they just fly a lot of places that no other airline would fly, making them a really important link to some of the UK's more remote places. The one downside is that they're often absurdly expensive. This flight came in at an almost reasonable £171, but then some of their more obscure routes, like this Aberdeen to Kirkwall one I found, costs over £300 for a shorter flight than this. Then again, no other airline actually flies these routes, so there's not really any comparison. Thanks to that, I'll keep them at a 6 out of 10 on my airline tier list. Pretty good for a regional airline, and I would definitely recommend them if you can get a good price, even if just for the experience of flying them. So that's it for this video. Thanks a lot for watching if you made it this far. Leave a comment if you have any questions, and if you like my videos and want to support me, then you can also become a channel member for members only travel update posts, early video access, and occasional pictures of my cat. And I also have a Buy Me a Coffee page if you want to make a one-off contribution to the channel. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you in the next video.